approval of our refit application and the procurement of land for the wind farm. Although neither risk is likely to happen, either risk occurring would terminate our project. So our plans to mitigate the risk would be to make sure that our refit application satisfies all of the criteria that they have outlined. Some things are that our location helps to stabilize the power grid. The location also aids in local economic development, both in terms of providing power and in helping unemployment. We would have to use black labor as much as possible to satisfy legislation. We need to ensure a viable network connection tie-in to the existing infrastructure. We need to establish financing in advance, and it would also help to have a pre-approved environmental impact analysis. So as well as making sure we have a strong refit application, we would also plan to hire a local consultant to help us find available land, deal with zoning, permits, and land lease agreements and negotiations. So our recommended strategy is to enter the market launching a wholly owned subsidiary into South Africa, or TransAlta South Africa. We would plan to install and operate a 20 turbine, 50 megawatt capacity wind farm in the Western Cape, and then we would produce and sell renewable energy to Eskom, which is the renewable energy purchasing agent. The reason we chose a wholly owned subsidiary is because there are no major players in the wind market in South Africa, and due to the guaranteed profitability of the business because of the 20-year refit contracts, most of the profit would go to the seller if we were to buy somebody. So the plan would be to have expatriate staff from TransAlta Canada managing the relationships and the agreements, but have local staff manage all of the operations.
So to conclude, we're going to talk about our recommended 3-year action plan. So first steps would be to identify and form a project team to focus on the expansion into the South African market. The initial site assessment to pick a plant location is very critical, as Alex mentioned, to our refit approval. Then we would do an electrical infrastructure assessment and a cost assessment. Then we would have to secure financing for the $106 million project. It would take us around 6 months to do the initial research and planning in order to submit a favorable refit application. It will take generally a year to receive approval for this, and upon approval we'd also get the generation license. Upon receiving the approval, we would develop a detailed plan and a schedule for implementation. Then we would work on our partnership. So we would partner with IBEC, a local turbine manufacturer, to design and construct a new facility and to generate power, and we would distribute through Eskom. After all our partner contracts are signed, 6 months later we would then open a centralized local office in Western Cape and hire local staff and train them. So after all of these steps have been completed, then we would be able to give the green light to start the construction of the wind farm in Western Cape. So that concludes our presentation.
Thank you.
We'll take any questions.
Okay, good for.
Yeah. So you mentioned in the action plan that to mitigate the refit refusal risk, we have to build a strong proposal. So what are the key items to make such a strong proposal, and what is your contingency plan?
So I guess there wouldn't really be a contingency plan. The refit application has to be approved for us to be able to generate electricity there. So like I mentioned, some of the things that make up a strong application are how quickly you can have the operation running, but making sure that you satisfy labor legislation, that you have a location that aids the power grid, that you're actually supplying power in an area that needs it, that you're helping the local economy of wherever you set up your wind farm. You have environmental impact analysis completed and approved, and you have financing. So there's a strict criteria with the point system that the refit program is outlined very clearly for anybody applying. So we would follow that and do our best to satisfy all the criteria.
So then it sounds like this refit requirements can be a showstopper if you don't maintain it well. I mean, if it's not approved. So in order to meet these requirements, like what's the situation at TransAlta, for those criteria that refit requires? Like, can TransAlta meet those requirements, or for each criteria, or overall briefly?
Yeah, well, I believe so. The reason we chose TransAlta, one of the reasons was that they have a lot of experience in wind power in Canada, Australia, the US. So we have the expertise already. Then a lot of it comes down to finding the right location. So obviously we've got to go there, research the area. We do wind measurements and analysis to find the right spot, make sure we can tie into the grid, and obviously an evaluation of the local economy and the need would have to be carried out. So I think these are things that we would just have to take the right steps, do the proper research, and make sure that we're following the guidelines. And the biggest thing is that TransAlta has the wind power experience.
Since Eskom is the largest energy provider in South Africa, they approximately maintain some 95%. So how would you convince them to buy it from you, and what is there for them?
We don't have to convince them. There's a designated purchasing agent as part of the refit program, and they're a publicly owned entity, so the government has already legislated that they will buy the power from you. It's not a matter of negotiating any terms with Eskom.
I have a question about the payback period. So I noticed that your capital, the payback period was based on a capital investment similar to the U.S. But in South Africa, it's a less developed nation, so there may be more risks associated with the capital investment there. So is there a mitigation? Did you guys think about a mitigation strategy for that type of thing specifically? Just in case that. Maybe I should read the question again.
For capital risk, the mitigation for our capital risk is to actually get budget estimates before we proceed with any applications. Like right now, we're working off of capital cost estimates in the United States and Europe, because getting capital cost estimates for wind farm in South Africa is very difficult. So we would have to get budget estimates from IWEC, from all the other partners involved, in order to firm up that capital number.
So essentially, you'd be asking them to give the cost back to you for this type of
It would be a stage gate approach of getting first budget estimates and then quotations, preliminary engineering design, things like that.
The biggest capital cost is the actual wind turbine itself.
Right. And
we have a lot of information about wind turbine costs in different countries, and we've got the local manufacturer there, but we can't exactly call them up and ask them exactly how much their wind turbines are. Yeah. But we approximately know for a utility scale, 2.5 megawatt turbine, which is what they usually use, we have a pretty approximate cost.
So it's not, there isn't a big disparity between.
Yeah, there's like a certain size of wind turbine that you use in a utility scale operation, and they're usually, in the ballpark.
Good job, by the way, guys. Given that competitors from around the world are likely bidding on projects like these, what strategy will you use to beat aggressive bidding by lower cost competitors?
So the application isn't necessarily based on cost. It's based on actually meeting the weighted criteria that they have. So we're not really competing on that kind of scale. So again, just be making sure we have a very strong that meets the criteria.
Basically, the demand for power is far greater than the supply. So you're not really competing for a little chunk of supplying power. It's like bring more.
Okay, we'll have to stop it there. Thanks very much.